Okay. So then he says in 21, Tat arth ev drishasya atma. Tat means the seer, that consciousness. And over here, actually, more precisely, the consciousness fallen in the cycle of samsara. Individual jeev. Okay, tat. Arth means purpose. Ev means only. Drishasya, this objective world. Atma, the self, the core. The essence of the objective world lies in fulfilling the purpose of that. That means the Atma. So all of this, what we see, whether it's a bhoot padarth or whether it's this body, everything, this sansar is for the Atma. So who's the master? The Atma, the soul. Okay. So this world is for us, not the other way around. But we have forgotten how to use it. We just get used by it. That is the problem. So two categories of Purush, as I always tell you, special and the ordinary. Special Purush refers to one who has never been touched by 5 afflictions. That's a special. And again, the afflictions, you should know those 5 afflictions. Ordinary Purush, they get under the influence of those 5. So if we remember this verse, then we can always keep it in our mind that if we don't have the afflictions, we can use all this painlessly. That way we always keep a distinction between us and the Prakriti. We don't want to get caught in this sansar again and again, in this bondage. We feel liberated right here. So this sutra actually explains that the objective world enables the jeeves to realize their pristine state of consciousness. It helps us. So we have been given the power of discernment and use the power of discernment properly. Okay, so again and again with these verses, that's what he's telling us, that this is, if our eyes are completely open and we know what the tools are and how to use the tools, we can definitely attain this freedom faster. Let's look at next one. Kritartham pratinashtam api anashtam tat anye sadharantavat. Krit means done, accomplished. Arth means purpose. So the one whose purpose is fulfilled, kritartham. Prati means toward, nashtam destroyed. Api means yet, anashtam not destroyed. Tat means that, anya means other, sadharantavat for the reason of being common. In relation to the one whose purpose is fulfilled, the objective world is destroyed. But in relation to others, it's not destroyed. For the objective world is common to all Purushas. So what does it mean? This destroyed means a person who has attained this upvarg, objective world is there, but it doesn't have any effect on him. Doesn't have any power over him. So he feels free from it. If you don't have a clinging towards certain temptations which you had before, now it could be in front of you, but you are not, you don't feel that you are under the sway of it. It could be there, but for other people, they feel bondage by it, but you are free from it. For you, it doesn't even matter. Okay, so let me read it again. In relation to the one whose purpose is fulfilled, the objective world is destroyed. Okay, it doesn't have any power over you. But in relation to others, for others it does exist. For you it doesn't even exist because you are not tempted by it. As soon as we see our core being, our purpose, and we see that it's accomplished, we find fulfillment and freedom. We find fulfillment by discovering the desirable and the undesirable qualities of the objects of our experiences. We find freedom by discovering the essential nature of the experiencer. It's like a supremely purified mind, and more precisely, actually, buddhi is the finest tool which we have. Buddhi is the one which decides. See, mind just likes to think. Buddhi decides. It's not for me. I don't need it. Then that thing or situation doesn't have a power over you. That's why they say that buddhi tattva ultimately gets absorbed into the mahat tattva. It's just like it loses its power, it just becomes so subtle, it just goes back. So once the purpose of bhog and upvarg is accomplished, the objective world is no longer seen by the Purush. Seen by the Purush. It is there, but you don't see it. It has nothing to do with you. Because the knowledge has discerned. And these are the people who are living in a body, but they are living freely. There's a Sanskrit word for it. It's called Jivan Mukta. You are living, but you are free. Jivan Mukta. So the whole Prakriti is there. For others, it exists. For this person, whether it's there or not doesn't even matter. Not under the clause of it. So at the dawn of this discernment, the so-called essential property of the worldly objects vanishes. This really frees a person from its sensory cravings. It is in this sense the world and worldly objects are said to be destroyed. So for others, they are not destroyed. For a yogi, they are destroyed because they really don't have a power over this person. So in this particular sutra, Patanjali is telling us the phenomenal world which no longer serves any purpose for an accomplished yogi continues to serve the purpose of the others. If a person was in the habit of drinking, was looking for the bars, then all of a sudden realized it's no good for me. Bars are there, but for that person it doesn't even matter anymore. And same thing happens for other things also. We become free. So the relationship between our core being and our mind is beginningless actually. Sure, this Prakriti and Purush, they were always there. They will be there. But from the standpoint of enlightened masters, we were prisoners of this before. But now, when you become Jivan Mukta, you become liberated from this. So from that person's point of view, it doesn't even exist anymore. And this all comes from the sadhana. It's not just a blessing of a guru. Guru can teach, guide, inspire, but ultimately it's our own sadhana. And sadhana pertains to this studying also. Because if we really don't know, what are we supposed to practice? We are lost, we are confused. Because studying something like this, it will give us a clarity. We know what to do. Sure, doing we have to do, but what to do, what not to do, who are we, where we are entangled, where we need to come out, how to come out. This is what we learn from these scriptures. Okay, so basically today, sure, we learned about the karmas also. Before karmas, the kleshas also. How the relationship between the karmas and the kleshas in our life right now. And this life, which is so much intermingling of this Purush and the Prakriti, and we have forgotten that we are the Purush, all pristine, special Purush. We have forgotten that. And with the help of the sadhana, we'll be able to recognize who we are and uplift ourselves. Okay, so this is what we learned, and we'll start definitely from verse number 23. And I wanted to do that today, but next time, because there's three terms very key in that verse. If you get a chance to look through it, there's a Swashakti, Swami Shakti, and Swarup. When I break it down for you next time, you will see that these are very highly significant, I would say, the terms Swashakti, Swami Shakti, and Swarup. Okay, so any question? No? Okay. So I think
no questions, but since everybody's here, we can tell them about our next workshop, which is going to be on May 1st. So if you all want to write that date down now into your calendars.
Yeah.
Of course, they will all receive the email too.
Yes. Yeah, you will definitely get the email, you'll get the notices, and thank you very much for coming, listening. I know this on the Zoom, this kind of a class becomes sometimes too heavy. You cannot ask the questions, and you want to ask the questions, but if you are studying it for the first time, do not get discouraged. And if you are studying for the second, third, fourth time, keep on studying. All right, namaste everyone. So as I was saying earlier, that these scriptures we need to study, not just read. So that's why we are rather going slowly in this class. Okay, so what we are studying over here is Yog Darshan. It's also called Yog Sutras by Rishi Patanjali. And this scripture has 4 chapters. The first chapter is Samadhi Pad, second one Sadhana Pad, third one Vibhuti Pad, and fourth one Kaivalya Pad. So we are still on the second chapter, Sadhana Pad, in the beginning of second chapter. Okay. Samadhi is the goal. Sure, there are several layers of Samadhi, and we learned all about that, and we'll learn more about it later on too. But how to reach the Samadhi? Rishi Patanjali starts with the second chapter. He says, for students like us who are serious about it, we need to take this Tapu, Swadhyaya, and Ishwar Pranidhan seriously. Because these are the very first 3 steps on the path of Kriya Yoga. And this Kriya Yoga will take us towards Samadhi. Because that's what he's telling us in the next verse. See, first verse of the chapter 2 was Tap Swadhyaya Ishwar Pradhanani Kriya Yoga. And we talked about Tap Swadhyaya Ishwar Pranidhan in detail. And that's what he's telling us in the second verse also. He says, the objective of practicing Kriya Yoga is so that you can attain the Samadhi, is to induce a Samadhi. Samadhi bhavanartham. And you minimize the afflictions. Afflictions are those obstacles which don't let you reach to that Samadhi state. Kalesh. Okay, so this Kriya Yoga is that important. That's why this is something we practice, not just only read about it. And then we learned in the verse number 3, what are these Kaleshas? He said, avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesha, kalesha. So these are 5 in number. avidya, the distorted self-understanding, avidya. Then mistaken self-identity, asmita. Rag is the attachment, dvesh is aversion, and fifth one is fear of death, or clinging to this worldly life. He says these are the obstacles. So we talked about these 5. Then in verse number 4, he says, all of them could be dormant, or feeble, or disjointed, or active in the deep soil of avidya. So that means the degree of these kleshas can vary from person to person, or in the same person from time to time, or from place to place. Some places we get very attached, other places we say that no, I'm not attached at all. So it's like a layer of the avidya, the ignorance is really telling us how the other 4 kleshas are in our mind. So we got to be careful about that. Then he gave us a beautiful definition of avidya. He says, making short-lived objects for eternity. Impurity as purity. Suffering as happiness. And lack of awareness for awareness of oneself. He says this is all ignorance. Okay, and we talked about it in detail last time. Now we're going to start with verse number 6 in this chapter 2 on asmita. What is asmita? So avidya is the root cause. It is in the soil of avidya the other 4 grow. Okay, so let's look at asmita. Asmita means false identity or distorted self-image. So Rishi Patanjali defines this: Drig darshan shaktor ekatma eva asmitaha. Drig means the seer, the purush, or the perceiver. That's a drig. Okay, who's seeing, the seer. Darshan, the sight, the prakriti. That's a darshan. Shaktor, that means the inherent capacity, the power, shakti. Ek atmataha ev. Ek means one, atmata, self, ev means like. So it's like a oneness of, or apparent oneness of, or dissolving one into the other. Or another way you can look at it, it's appearing one, but actually it's two. Asmita is I amness, the self-identity. So asmita emerges when the perceiver's power dissolves into the power of perception. So that means the power. What is the power? Power is the Atma, and it just gets dissolved. You lose sight of who you are. You just think that you are the Prakriti. That is Asmita. So Asmita is an extension of Avidya. So Avidya is lack of understanding, and it leads to distorted understanding. See, our core being is consciousness, pure consciousness. Intuitively we know that. But we do not know in what sense we exist. We forget that. Our core being is eternal. It is intelligent. Immortality and self-illumination are its inherent attributes. And the ignorance or the avidya is opposite of that. And these layers of the avidya, sometimes they are thin, sometimes they are thick. And this uneven distribution of the inner light gives this unique shape, size, color to this entity of this consciousness. And that is the birth of asmita, I amness. Asmita also is known as ego. Ego. So ordinarily when we say ego, that is asmita. The confused self-awareness. So it's like a subject and the object. There is a clear line between the subject and the object. But the line that keeps subject and object distinct, when it becomes blurred, that's where the problem is. We forget what is the subject and what is the object. And we think that a subject is the object or object is the subject. It's almost like a magic spell on us. So this identification is asmita. Another thing, remember, the stronger the avidya, the ignorance, the more blind the asmita. The blinder the asmita, the more insecure a person is. So when the insecurity arises in us, we got to look at it. Where is it coming from? I am essentially part of God, but I feel insecure, anxious, fearful. It's all because of wrong identification. And Patanjali calls this asmita a force field. And the field is always made up of two distinct forces. One force is coming from the Purush, the Atma, the seer, and the other one from the Prakriti. So that's why he says it's a confusion between these two, or merger between these two, or interplay between these two fields, these two forces. So in other words, it is asmita that gives definition to our being. So we identify ourselves with our image, my body, my achievements, my name, or even sometimes the values, the beliefs, anything and everything which defines our existence. We think that's what we are. And then what happens? We work so hard to defend our name, our fame, our power, our prestige. It's very frightening to us that all this existence, who we think we are, can be damaging. And we don't even mind attacking somebody whom we think is creating the damage. And what happens? We just create walls around us. We think that if we are in those walls of the asmita, we'll be safe. On one hand, we are looking for freedom. On the other hand, we just confine ourselves in those walls of asmita. Okay? So this is like a very complex anatomy of asmita or the ego. And it started from ignorance, the avidya. Not knowing who you are, you just end up thinking you are something else. And now, as a result of this asmita, this ego, a person descends into deeper waters of afflictions. And what are these deeper waters? Rag and dvesh. It's like a sliding down. Number 7 and 8, definition of rag and dvesh. Sukh anushayi raga and dukh anushayi dvesha. We all want sukh. Nobody wants dukh. And we get attached to it. So sukh anushayi. Sukh is the pleasure. Anushayi. Anushayi means which resides in. That which follows. Or that also means like a reservoir or pool. Anushayi. Raga. Raga means attachment, clinging. And dukh, anushayi, dvesha. Dukh means the pain, sorrow, grief. And dvesh is dislike. Nobody likes dukh. We all want sukh. So, number 7, it says attachment springs from the reservoir of pleasure and aversion springs from the reservoir of sorrow. So, where did it start? From I amness. If I think I'm the body, any kind of a pleasure which I derive from the body, I get attached to it. Anything bad happens to the body, or bad happens if I think that no, my name, my fame, my position, it is getting attacked, sure there will be dukkha. So sukhanushayi ragaha, dukhanushayi dveshaha. So asmita clings to the notion of whatever we come to identify as our core being. It's almost like in scriptures, we hear story about few blind men. Few blind men, they are in a room where there's a big elephant. And they give the description of the elephant according to the place where they have touched. A person who's touching the tail will say it's like a snake. Elephant is a snake. A person touching the body on the side, elephant is like a wall. And the same thing for the rest of the elephant also. So this is what happening to us. We identify ourselves as a body or the position, we get attached to it because our sense of identity is distorted. Even though our real nature is happiness, it's bliss. But this power of self-understanding, when it lacks a vision of truth, which he is calling asmita, and through this asmita, we are clinging to certain situations, and that's a rag. So pleasure to most of us comes from holding on to asmita. Even though our real nature is joy, but we think by holding on to asmita, we are finding the pleasure. Because there is a sense of accomplishment in seeing this notion expand and be recognized by others. But it's a slippery ground. When it doesn't work the way we want, what is the result? Anger. So this anger-driven thought construct the vrittis. The vrittis we are supposed to control. That's called the vesh. They're all vrittis. So in other words, this is what I am, is asmita. This is what I want to be, is rag, attachment. This is what I don't want to be, dvesh, aversion. The fear that our asmita might be altered or destroyed is an affliction. So now you see it started from avidya, then the identification based upon that avidya, then getting attached and wanted to stay away from the negatives. So the fear that I may lose my precious asmita is an affliction, and the fear that someone may take it away from me is an affliction. What happens is, in order to escape from one affliction, we get trapped into another affliction. So where we experience a false sense of freedom from all other afflictions. That's what we are looking for. But then what happens? We are all so attached to this worldly life, this sense of identification. We really don't even pay much attention to the bigger picture, where we have come from, what my true identity is. And we are always afraid of dying. That is abhinivesh. Otherwise, what is death? We have heard it many times, we have read it many times, and inside we really know that I never die. But we don't want to let go of what we have acquired. And that's why we are afraid. Because otherwise, what happens at the time of death? Sure, we leave whatever we have collected behind. It could be the relationship, it could be the things, it could be the positions. But the real us is not gone. But we are afraid. And that's what he's telling us in verse number 9. Swaraswahi vidushaha api tatha rud abhinivesha. So technical term for this affliction is abhinivesha. Swaraswahi. It's a beautiful word. Swa means one's own. Ras means essence. Vahi means one who carries. So that means that which carries its own essence. Swaraswahi. That means which carries its own subtle memories. Vidushaha. Knowledgeable. A wise person. Vidushaha. Api means even. Tatha means in that manner. Rude. Rude means a riding. A person who's riding or located. Abhiniveshaha. That is which has penetrated every living being. It's like an all-around abhinivesh in every respect. And over here it really means death. Abhinivesh. Death. Fear of death, if you know it more clearly. So he says fear of death carries its own essence and predominates even the wise. So that means nobody wants to die. We all know that ours is a death-averse culture. We don't even want to talk about death. To a medical practitioner, death means defeat. Death is our enemy, we think. But to a yogi, death is a fact. Death is only for the body, not for the Atma, not for the soul. Anybody who has taken a birth will definitely die. Atma has not taken a birth, only the body has taken a birth. So body will dissolve ultimately. It's almost like just like a farmer harvests his crops. That which has penetrated the very core of our being, that is death. Why is death so painful? You got to look into it. Why we are so afraid of it? Because we don't have enough knowledge what really happens after letting go of this body. Anything we don't know, we are afraid of. Most of the people, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to investigate into it. They don't want to sink their mind deeper into this reality. So that's why it's painful. Because we think at the time of the death, everything will be left behind. It will be snatched from us. That's why a yogi starts the journey from detachment, mental detachment. If I give away physically also, mentally also, before I die, then it's no pain. If I want to hold on to it and it gets snatched at the time of death, sure, it's painful. So this fear is the root cause of pain, and it's virtually incurable. That's why Patanjali calls fear of death an affliction. So it started from ignorance, avidya. Then it went into the wrong identification, sense of identification, asmita. Then attachment to something good is happening, and aversion to something which is painful happening, and then ultimately fear of death. But as yoga students, we got to remember, death does not kill our soul. It does not destroy our mind either, actually. Mind is going to go with us. If we want to transcend the mind, it can happen only when we are alive during samadhi. It does not separate us from likes and dislikes, because those also are going to go in the mind with us. It doesn't even nullify our habits. That's why two babies born from the same mother at the same time can have different habits. We carry all this with us. Then why are we so afraid of dying? We need to examine into it. This pervasive fear has its roots in the lack of understanding. Lack of understanding. Okay? We got to remember that freedom of the soul is infinitely more valuable than the short-lived comforts of the flesh. Freedom of the soul. That's why ultimate goal is freedom of the soul. A person living with the fear of death dies again and again. Constantly, if you are afraid, you die again and again. And that is an affliction. That's an affliction. So now remember, because these 5 afflictions you will see, we'll visit it again and again. It's a very important part of, just like very important part in the first chapter was Abhyas and Vairagya. Abhyas is the practice, Vairagya is the detachment. And another very important part was Chittavritti Nirodha, the mental modifications, how our mind fluctuates. When he gave us several ways to do the Abhyas, that was very important part of first chapter. And now over here, Kriya Yoga and these 5 afflictions so far. Maybe write them down, memorize them. Anytime I ask you, what are the afflictions? How many are there? What are they? Avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. Whether in Sanskrit or English, doesn't matter. Whichever way you can memorize them. Because this is what, these are the obstacles. We are serious students who want to cross these obstacles. In order to attain that ultimate goal, we need to cross the obstacles. And if you don't even know what the obstacles are, how are we going to cross them? And it starts with the ignorance, the avidya. Okay, so that is the soil. So the rest of the 4 grow in the soil of ignorance. Okay. Now, verse number 10 and 11. Let's look at them together. So, te pratipasva heyaha sukshamaha. Te means they. They means these 5 afflictions. Pratipasva heya. Pratipasva means with potential to be born. Pratipasva, or ability to manifest. Haya means to be avoided, destroyed. Sukshma means subtle. So these five-fold afflictions are subtle. And they should be destroyed before they manifest vividly. See, subtler the thing, the more pervasive it is. So they are so subtle. So before they manifest, destroy them. Otherwise, if you let it manifest, it will take longer to destroy them. And in order to attain that ultimate goal, we have to destroy them. It's up to us. Do we want to destroy them when they are many branches of it and very strong also, or do we want to destroy it before they manifest? Okay, that's the point he's trying to make over here. So they are subtle and to be destroyed before they manifest vividly. Pratipasva. Number 11, he says, Dhyan hai tad vrityah. Dhyan means meditation. Haya means to be destroyed by. Tad means that. Vritya, modifications. So evolutes of the afflictions are to be destroyed by meditation. So he says they are very strong, very subtle. We got to definitely destroy them. How to destroy them? By meditation. So now you see that daily meditation, how important it is. It's not just a meditation retreat after a year or 5 years. No, daily meditation. So avidya is the first and foremost affliction. All other afflictions are extensions of the avidya. Remember that? And this avidya is like a crabgrass actually. It spreads underneath the soil. We can't even see anything on the surface. Because by the time we really see the crabgrass on the surface, these roots have spread quite a bit. At a lot more place, you just try to pull one out, you will see that so much root comes, and that's what avidya is. And this avidya has 5 modules. Avidya. He doesn't mention it over here, but remember 5 modules. These are called Panch Parva. Because out of avidya, we see these 5 in us. Excessive desires, anger, greed, delusion, all that we see in us. Those are called Panch Parva. A vigilant student tries to destroy these while meditating. A non-meditating time keeps an eye on these Panch Parva also. Because mind is like a field and these seeds have been planted there. But it can definitely come to an end. When we learn how to reach deep into the soil of the mind, discovering the seeds of avidya, roasting them with the fire of knowledge, these seeds can become inert. This is what Sutra 10 is telling us. Okay, Sutra 10 says, Te pratipasva heya sukshma are to be destroyed while they are still subtle. But in 11, he is saying what to do if they have already become manifested. Because certain seeds, they have become manifested. There are vasanas because of those seeds. But there are certain seeds, they are still in the seed form. It's almost like if we have a silo and there are seeds in there. Seeds we don't need to grow. Because we know if we grow, there will be harvest. But then there are certain seeds which we already planted. So in verse number 11, he is telling us what to do. The seeds which already got planted, destroy them with the meditation. And the others, just they are so subtle, you did not manifest, just let them go, detach from them. So discovering and destroying the seeds of ignorance, definitely it's not easy task. Just imagine, there's a mustard seed hidden somewhere deep in the soil of a vast field. How do we find it? That mustard seed only can be found when it has sprouted. Bigger seeds, sure, we can find. A seed of a mango, we can find and discard. So that's what has happened inside us also. Certain seeds, they are big. Be aware of them. Discard them right away. But still don't be careless. There could be some very subtle small seeds. With the help of the meditation, take care of them. Roast them. Okay, so it's not just one method alone, because there are many, many different kinds of seeds. So the process of recognizing which seed and which one to uproot skillfully is called meditation. It definitely requires vigilance, careful attention. That's why a yoga student is very attentive all the time, not just while studying. Of course, during meditation, that's the most attention we are paying when we are meditating. Meditation is not a relaxation. Because sometimes people think that we're going to meditate and relax our body. No, meditation is a lot of work actually. We got to be so attentive at that time because you are roasting the very subtle seeds in your deeper mind. Pay attention. So this clearing process is compared to the practice of Kriya Yoga. Okay, so this is all part of the Kriya Yoga actually. Kriya Yoga. So a vidya that is slightly less subtle and relatively more manifest is to be destroyed by meditation. Just remember that. And vividly manifest vidya with its multiple stems and leaves, which are fully blended in other plants, can be destroyed with a step-by-step practice of Kriya Yoga. Okay? Because in Kriya Yoga, he did not mention meditation. Tap, Swadhyaya, Ishwar Pranidhan. But now he's telling us to meditate also. Okay? See, this is Dhyan, Heya, Tad Vrityaha. Okay? So it depends what you are working with. Use that kind of a tool. So all day long, Tap, Swadhyaya, Ishwar Pranidhan, that's how you live your life. Well-disciplined life. Study also. Surrender to God also. But then at the same time, meditate also. That's why a lot of people, when they ask me, should we meditate or should we pray? And my answer is always both. Meditation also, prayer also. Both we need to do, not just one. Okay? So now he's telling us how this is all these kleshas are connected with the karmas. You all know the karmic law of karma, how this is all connected. Because as human beings, we are in a karma yoni, it's a species of karmas. We all do actions. Karma doesn't mean only the bad actions. Karma means any kind of action is a karma. Not just a physical action, but verbally also what we speak. In our mind, the thoughts, those are also karmas. We cannot live without karmas. And he's just making a beautiful connection between the kaleshas and the karmas here. Kalesh moolah karmashe drishtaha adrishtaha janam vedniya. Kalesh, the afflictions. You are familiar with this now. The fivefold afflictions. Kalesh. Mool, root or foundation. So Kalesh Mool together means the one which has its roots in the Kaleshas, or which is the ground or the source of the Kaleshas. Karmashe. Karam is the action, or even the subtle impressions. Those are also karmas. Ashe means the resting ground, the container. That's a ashe. So container of the karmas, or the reservoir of the karmas, that's a karmashe. Drashtaha, seen. Adrishtaha, unseen. Okay, this is one thing you should know. Any word, when you put a in front of it in Sanskrit, that becomes opposite. So drashta is a seen, adrashta is unseen, like a visible and invisible. Janam means birth. And over here in this context, it really means drashta means the present. Adrashta means the future. We cannot see future. So that is a adrashta. Okay. Janam is the birth. Vedniye, to be experienced. So he says this is a definition of the anatomy of karma. If you want to understand karmas better, this is what it is. Karmic phenomena is rooted in afflictions. Okay? All our karmas, present, past, future, that's all rooted in the afflictions. That's how important these afflictions are to us. So karmic phenomena is rooted in afflictions, and this phenomena is what we experience in our current and future lives. Because future life is not separate from the current life. It's a continuation of this life. It's just like today and tomorrow, it's a continuation. This week and next week, this year and next year, this life and next life, or the past life. There's a continuation. And where is it coming from? Where is it rooted? In the afflictions. If I'm ignorant at night, in the morning, I'll get up ignorant. If I have very high level of ego at night, in the morning also it will be the same. So I have to work on that field of mine. So this sutra is the backbone of the law of karma. And that means reincarnation also. It really answers some of the questions which a lot of people have. How did we create karmas? How are karmas stored? How do the karmas get the nourishment? How do they become active? And how some of the karmas, they never bear fruit, and others bear fruit instantly. Because as a seeker, we have these questions. Or we often wonder why some people are so lucky and others, they try their best and they just do not find luck. It could be in the material world, it could be in the spiritual world also. This sutra also tells us what we can do to change our karmic field. Because if we know where it's all coming from, we need to change that. And the central word over here is karmasya. Karmasya. Because this really takes us to the core of yoga science and yoga philosophy. Because some people call it a yoga is a science, some is philosophy. Doesn't matter what you call it. It just takes us to the depth of it. And it is a composite word, karam and ashya. Karam means action. It really means this inevitable law of cause and effect. Karam. Do good, reap good. Do bad, reap bad. Whether you believe it or not, this is what happens. You don't have to belong to a certain ism or have a certain gender. No, this is a universal law. Okay, that's why it's called a law of karma. So at a deeper level, karma refers to the subtle effects of our actions. Every action leaves an impression in our memory. That's also a karma. Those impressions are called sanskaras. Repeated action reinforces these impressions. And ultimately what happens? They become habits. And as a habit, they become an integral part of our vast conscious field. Whether you want to call it a subconscious or unconscious, all that memory is stored in there. And strong habits, they become building blocks of our personality. They define our being. So this is a karma. So karma is not just a only action. Just remember, it's a larger picture about karma, remember. And the second word I said, ashya, that means a pouch, container, ashya, or a sack. Or something which has the capacity to contain something. So this ashya is a container which is containing all the karmas or the impressions of the karmas. See, just like if you know Hindi, gallbladder is called pitashya. Pouch of pit. Pit means a bile. Or stomach is called amashya. Right? The people who know Hindi, they know that pouch of undigested food is amashya. And then there is a pakvashya. What is a pakvashya? See, amashya is undigested food. Pakvashya is intestines, pouch of digested food. So that means a pouch. These are different pouches for different thing. Whether it's a bile or the digested food or the undigested food. So what is this pouch then? Because these are the physical pouches. We know there's a physical pouch which is called stomach or which is called gallbladder. But what is, how is this pouch made? Which is containing our karmas and the impressions of the karmas. According to the Yoga Shastra, the science of yoga, this pouch is made up of the mind. Pouch is the mind. And this mind is subtle. Because bile is a physical substance, so the pouch it contains is also physical. Karma is a subtle, so the pouch it contains is also subtle. But this analogy raises a further question. The gallbladder contains bile, but it is not a source of bile. Where is the bile manufactured? In the liver. I'm sure you know that from your high school science. So basic metabolic process governs how much bile is manufactured. The rate at which it is funneled into the gallbladder and when and in what rate it is discharged into the small intestine. That's how it functions, our body. Similarly, the functioning of our karmasya is governed by the forces of time, space, and causation. And that is not in our hands. That's why we say we do the karmas. But who gives the karma phal? God does. There's a higher power who created this law. Is governed by that law. This process is called destiny also. And the birth is the end result. And this karmasya, which part of the mind is this karmasya? That's called a chitta. The deeper part of the mind. That's why the definition of yoga is yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. We need to clean this. We need to clean this ashya, this pouch, because that's where everything is stored. So chitta karmasya is guided and governed by the forces of time, space, and causation. Sometimes we think, no, I'm doing something good. How come good doesn't happen to me? Because in the past, how do we know? What did we do? Those impressions are still there. Effects of the karmas are still there. And the time is right now for those actions, those seeds to sprout. This is not in your hands. That is in the hand of the providence. So that's why this whole analogy answers a lot of questions. So our karmasya is connected. See, one thing we got to remember, karmasya is connected to the field of afflictions. Okay? Field of affliction means those ignorance, the I amness, the attachment, the aversion, and the fear of death. That's affliction. Those kleshas. So this analogy makes it very clear that our karmas are manufactured in the field of affliction. And from this field, they flow into the karmasya. And from there, guided by the forces of the time, space, and causation, they find their way into the domain of matter and consciousness. This is the whole picture of our karmas. So, all the nurturance to the karmasya is from the field of afflictions. If we are wise, the field of affliction is clean. It's pious. But otherwise it could be non-pious. It's almost like having a soil which is fertile, which will grow beautiful trees, or unfertile, or full of weeds. So the affliction or kleshas are one of the most important topics in Yoga Sutras. That's why I'm spending so much time on it. These afflictions. Okay, so affliction is a technical term. So generally when you talk to people about affliction or a klesha, they'll think that it refers to the source of pain and miseries. So like in a stricter sense, that's what it is. Okay, so just remember that and always go back to the definitions also. Okay, so karmasya is the warehouse. The qualities of the karmas depend on the attributes and characteristics of our afflictions. And there are two kinds, virtuous and non-virtuous. Okay, so all actions are not bad. There are good actions and there are not so good actions. So virtuous and non-virtuous. And karmasya dominated by the negative karmas is called a apunya karmasya. That's another term you will see in the scriptures, apunya, non-virtuous karmas. And on the other hand, the more enlightened the field of avidya, less deluded the asmita, less potent the rag and dvesha or fear of death, this will create a different kind of environment. The karmas manufactured in that kind of a soil are positive, constructive. There will be a flavor of dispassion, contentment, love, compassion. So karmas are not just bad. That's the point I want to make. It's up to us what we want to grow. So we have one vast mind field in which we have storing all kinds of karmas. So that's why nobody can say that I have only the good karmas or the good seeds in my karmasya. There are some goods and they are not so good. So all of us have both the combination of good and bad. And what is the goal of a yoga student? Bring a qualitative change in the field of affliction. That's what we want to do. We want to do more and more good karmas. Minimize the grip of ignorance. We need to elevate our self-understanding. And eventually, we need to free ourselves from the binding forces of attachment, aversion, fear, desire, anger, greed, etc. That's what yoga sadhana is. This kind of a sadhana transforms us. It has the benefit now and it has the benefit in the future also. And the next sutra we'll see, which is addressing what happens if our karmas and the mind that houses them remain rooted in the dark, dense field of avidya. Okay? Because we take birth again and again according to this karmasya. So he says, Sati mule tad vipakaha jati ayu bhogaha. Sati means in the presence of. Mule, root. Tad means that. And over here, that is referring to karmasya. Okay, the pouch of the karmas. Okay. Vipakaha. Vipaka means the fruit or the condition of bearing fruit, vipakaha. Jati, to be born in a body, particular species, that's a jati. Ayu, your lifespan. Bhogaha, the experience. Experience means predominantly painful or pleasurable. So he's saying as long as the root continues to exist, that karmasya must have an effect forcing us to be born into a particular species, live for a particular span of time, and undergo inescapable experiences of pleasure and pain. So root, cause, where we are born, how long we're going to live, predominantly whether we'll have a pleasurable life or a painful life, it's all rooted in our karmasya. And who stored the seeds in the karmasya? We did. So all this is decided. So we are the one who are the maker of our destiny. Sure, architect is God. He is the one who made all this whole law. Universal law for everybody. This diagram is made by him, but he has given us the freedom to choose this or choose that. And depending upon what we choose, what do? We are creating our own destiny. This is what he is trying to tell us. So our lives are shaped by our own actions. Our pleasure, our pain, success or failure, gain or loss are the results of our actions. Where and how we are born, the circumstances that walk into our lives are determined by our actions. And actions are of two kinds. past and now. So it's not just only the past and now. And then past actions are also twofold. Those we performed a long time ago. It could be several lifetimes ago. And we have forgotten. And those we still remember. Okay? So right now also we are doing the actions. In the past we have done it. And past could be yesterday or the last minute. That's a past. The minute you have moved into the now, it becomes past. But then there's a long time ago past also. So these results are totally in the hands of an unseen force. And that's why, because we don't remember, and the diagram was created, this law was created by God, that is an unseen force. So that's why we call it sometimes destiny or providence or nature or God. But our current actions are somewhat in our control. Past, we don't have any control. Even though the current actions also are heavily influenced by past, but still there is some control. So that's why the Yogi Guru says, live in the present, pay attention what you're doing, live with this knowledge, and you'll have a strength and the energy to deal with what is coming. And then right now you'll be doing the right kind of actions too. And always remember the two categories of actions too. Punya and Pap, auspicious and inauspicious. Right now we have a control over what kind of actions we want to do, the good actions. So the majority of our actions are actually neither supremely good nor terribly bad. Average persons, that's how they are. So it's like a mixture of likes and dislikes, confidence and doubt, clarity and confusion. So what happens with this kind of a mind field? There are opposing attributes, they weaken each other. So they make our actions mildly positive or negative. That's how we live our life, mildly good or bad. But actions which we do under the influence of ignorance, the avidya, which we need to get rid of, but in the past maybe we have done that, they really bring intense egoism in us, intense attachment, intense aversion, intense fear. And there are intense karmic consequences because of those. On the other hand, under the influence of wisdom, what happens? Intense surrender. Because wisdom teaches us, Ishwar Pranidhan, surrender to God. Intense non-attachment. Not a mild non-attachment, intense non-attachment, intense love, intense trust. They create intense karmic consequences. So these intense consequences, whether they are good or bad, we cannot escape them. And this is what we call act of destiny. That's why some actions are so significant, so powerful, they form their own independent karmasya, it seems like. They mature very quickly because of this intensity. It's like almost like a storm, something happens. You meet somebody, all of a sudden your life has changed. That's because of this intensity. It's a turning point in your life. There have been stories in the scriptures how a robber became a saint overnight because of this intensity. But it was all because of his own karmas. And we have the power to bring this intensity. And as yoga students, we want to bring the intensity into the punya karma. That's what he's telling us over here. Just be careful about the distinction between these two. Because when we torture somebody, that's an intense negative karma. And when we do some positive action, practice of austerity, staying in samadhi, surrender to God, worship of a deity, offering our service for mankind, those are very powerful positive karmas. Okay? And the very first word in this sutra is sati. Sati. If you go back to that, over here, he really means that do not forget the previous sutra. So he's reminding us that even though actions are housed in the realm of the mind, they are born and nurtured in the realm of fivefold afflictions. Okay, so these 2-3 verses over here, they really explain or answer a lot of questions in our life. Say or inevitable law of karma, they explain. Because due to ignorance, we identify ourselves with our actions. We become attached to the fruits of our actions. And we want to stay away from the aversion to any contrary outcome. So he is telling us that remember the whole picture. Karmas are stored in the karmashya. And it's our karmashya. So nobody else's karmashya. So just like it's my stomach, my intestines, these are my tools. The karmashya is also mine. But as long as the karmashya is connected with the negativity, I'll keep on pouring the negative karmas. So I need to work on that. So 3 factors are totally dependent on our previous karmas: jati, ayu, and bhoga. We are born as a human being. That's a jati. So he's referring to a human jati. Okay. Ayu, how long are we going to live? Dependent upon our past karmas. And bhog, experience. Consuming is like a experiencing by consuming or being consumed by experiences. It's up to us. So that's what he's trying to tell us, making us more and more aware of it. Let's look at one more and then we will go through the question answers. Again, he starts this verse number 14 with the they. They means they. Again, he's connecting with the past sutras. They. Hlad paritap phal, punya apunya hetutvat. So te means they. Hlad, that means joyful, pleasant. Paritap, it's painful, sorrow. Phal means fruit. Punya apunya hetutvat. Punya is virtue, apunya is vice, hetutvat due to being the cause. So they, over here, they means the 3 effects of past actions, which he mentioned in the previous verse. Birth in a particular species, lifespan, and inescapable pleasure or painful experiences. Okay, these 3 are accompanied by pleasure and pain, for they are rooted in the virtuous and non-virtuous karmas. So again, he is telling us how this is all connected because of the karmas. Why every experience is a mixture of pain and pleasure? Because our karmas are like that. The karmas are never clearly virtuous or clearly non-virtuous by us. So that's why there's always karma, a mixture. Or some karmas we do virtuous and others non-virtuous. An effect of that we feel also. So the mind is the prime reason we perform actions. Mind. The mind is filled with the desires of all kinds. So it's like we want some fruit, and because of the fruit, that kind of a fruit, we do certain karmas. And most of us do not have a perfectly clear, calm, and tranquil mind. If we had a perfectly clear, calm, tranquil mind, it will show in our actions. Since we don't have, we are not established in our pure self. And that's why our actions and the fruits of our actions are always a mixture of good and bad, right and wrong, pleasure and pain. So that's why the whole yoga sadhana is what? Purify your mind, calm your mind, stay tranquil. That doesn't mean that don't do your karmas. Do your karmas with the help of that kind of a pure mind. Then your actions will be, your karmas will be pure too. Sometimes there's a motive is little different. There are so many stories in the Yoga Shastras also, Puranas also, that how from outside a person is a great yogi, a great guru also, but the motive was not pure. So the future was not that good. There is a interaction between a lizard and Rishi Vyas. That lizard was very afraid to even cross the road. And Rishi Vyas, he had that kind of a vibhuti where he could talk to the animals also. And he asked that lizard that, how come you are so afraid? She says, I can see a chariot coming and this chariot can kill me. So Rishi Vyas said, why are you so attached to this life of yours? Actually, it was a chameleon. What is in your life that you are so attached to? Then Rishi Vyas said, I can show you with my power that what you were in the past. How did you become a chameleon? And she saw that in the past life, she was a great teacher. Taught the scriptures to the students. Only taught, did not live according to the philosophy. Told everybody else, meditate, do the selfless service, but did not do it himself. It's like a different colors. And in this life, he became a chameleon. So it's all because of the karmas. Physical karmas, he was doing good, teaching others, but not doing what he was supposed to do himself. Hypocrisy, different colors. So there's so many stories like that. So that's why Rishi Patanjali over here is very clearly telling us that our actions, whether they are done physically or mentally or verbally, they do, the effect of that goes into the pouch, which is called karmasya. And because of the karmasya, we take birth in a different species for a length of time, or whether it will be predominantly pleasurable or painful also, it's our own. We are the creator of our life. So it's like a big diagram. He is giving it to us so that we can live a life with open eyes, where we are the one who are on this driver's seat. This is why he's telling us in detail all of this. So I'll stop talking now. If you guys have any questions, we can do little interaction and then take 15 minutes of break after that, and then come back and continue with this workshop.
We have one question, Sujata. You have to unmute. Sujata, can you unmute?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Hershey, quick question. I know that the good karmas and the bad karmas don't negate each other, but apparently, from what you're saying, they influence it. I mean, the outcome is they sort of interact, and our actions are a product of that interaction.
Yeah, what happens is they really don't cancel out.
Right.
But if we increase more good karmas, we'll have more clarity and we'll have the energy to deal with the fruits of the bad karmas. Otherwise, if we don't have that clarity, we can create more negative karmas by blaming others, blaming God. Okay, so doing more predominantly with a watchful eye, more good karmas puts it as at a better place. Past we cannot change.
Right. Right.
Okay, so this is what happens.
Thank
They
you.
don't cancel out.
Right. Now that
A
I
lot
know
of people
that.
think that they good and bad they cancel out. No, good also I'll have to reap, bad also I'll have to reap. But bad can be, it can felt a little less with the help of this understanding. Okay, yeah. Yes,
We have Dr. Chandra who has a question.
yes, Dr.
Hershey, thank you for that chameleon example, was pretty good. So I was wondering, all these viruses and bacteria, how will you consider, how will you place them in the context of reincarnation and with the past karma and present karmas?
You are saying who took birth as a virus?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bad karmas.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
they are also
and then bad karmas of us also. Right? Any kind of a pain we feel, but at the same time, a person with a more understanding can be more watchful of it.
yes.
Look at the bigger picture. Okay, but this is all karmas. Whether we take birth as a snake or even evolve into a godhood.
Yes.
This is all karmas.
Yes. Okay.
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 And sometimes we think so many bacteria, so many mosquitoes, so many rats. Of course,
Yes.
Of course, there are so many. Human beings are very few.
So
Human beings, no matter how much the population we have, it's only a handful.
Yes.
That's why our rishis, they say, be grateful to God that you have taken birth as a human being with a higher intellect and do not waste this lifetime.
Exactly.
From here, we need to move up. We don't want to become a chameleon.
Yes.
Or a bacteria.
Right.
Because there's an Atma in all of them.
Yes. So
okay? So it's all, according to this philosophy, it's all based upon the karmas. And we don't have any control over the past, only control we have is now. In the now. The present karma, how I'm going to do it. Okay.
Thank you. What about
good point.
Something, say, like in the same token, like when you talked about mosquitoes and rats, you have the, periodically we get the mosquito guys come and spray for mosquitoes and the rat to catch the rats and all. How do they come? Because will that also a karmic thing? We need to have them not to come into the house. We need to kind of exterminate them.
Yes, I know. That question comes to me all the time, and I understand we need to protect ourselves.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So it's not that we are trying to, in our thoughts, we should not have the negative energy in there.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah. Otherwise, we don't know how many, when I'm walking outside, how many bugs I'm killing.
Right. That's what I was.
But the same kind of energy we should have, that, I need to do what I need to do while praying. That's why praying for everybody helps.
Yes.
There are Panch Mahayagya as householders we are supposed to do, so that we increase more positive.
Okay.
Which will help us to take care of the negative also when the negative karmas fructify. feed the poor, help the poor, give the water to the plants.
Yes.
In India, they used to, before eating, they would feed a cow. They'll
Yes.
feed a dog. They'll put
Yes.
seeds out for the birds.
Yes.
You remember that? All those,
Yes.
and pray to God, keep this environment clean. So that's how the Panch Yagya, Mahayagya, we are adding so many punya. And here and there, if we have to kill a mouse or a mosquito, to preserve ourselves, not to feed ourselves, preserve ourselves, then we can take care of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay? So that's how it balances out. But because if we feel guilty about it, then it won't. Because guilt is also a karma in our own mind.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. No, good thoughts. Yes, Jyoti.
I think we are good to go for a break.
Hershey,
Oh,
Hershey,
Manju.
Manju
Yes, Manju.
here.
Yes, Manju.
So what's the difference between feed versus preserve? Feeding versus preserve. What does that mean?
Feeding versus preserve.
Yes.
Oh, you mean like a preserving yourself in that sense? You are
Just
saying?
just like you answered the question. Like,
Preserving means as a human life, we need to preserve ourselves. We need to protect ourselves. If I just let all the rats and all the snakes come in my house, how will I feel protected? That's what's called self-preservation. As a human being, I need to protect myself because as a human life is very precious to me. Through human life, I can uplift myself. So I need to preserve myself. Feeding, normally when we say feeding, feeding means eating food. Sure, that also
feed.
Watchfully, we get to eat our food. So that whatever I eat, it should enhance my life. Okay, so that's in that token we clean ourselves, we keep our environment clean. Okay, so self-preservation.
So Hershey, you said feed the plants. So I'm watering outside my plants.
Yeah, feeding the plants. Feeding
I have bird seeds out. I have
feeding
I donate to the poor, and then if I do all those, then if I smack a few mosquitoes along the way, I'm okay.
It's not that smacking the mosquitoes is not going to give you an outcome. But on the other hand, you have a reservoir of good karmas.
Okay.
And don't try to smack just for the sake of smacking.
No, like, when I...
Yeah, right? It's better to put a repellent on than smacking. If you put a repellent on, they will be away in their own domain.
Correct. But I just use that as
God has given us this intelligence. Some of the plants we grow in our garden, which will keep the mosquitoes away.
Oh.
Don't they say that? Grow mint, basil. So do some studies. God has given us this intellect. Use it properly. Or even inside our house. I have used that many times. If the ants come, instead of killing them right away, sprinkle salt or turmeric. They will not come. So instead of going directly towards killing or smacking, do something, do some research. And we are very fortunate these days. We got all sorts of information. How to keep them away.
Okay.
Hometown, they use neem oil lamps.
Neem oil lamps, right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah. So we got to use all that. I have given you this example many times. I grew up in the mountains in Shimla when I was a little girl. And the house we lived in, it was more like a log house built by Britishers a long time ago. So old walls and old floors, wooden floors. They were khatmals. Khatmals are like a bed bugs. And I have seen as a little girl, my father, Guruji, staying up all night sometimes picking up those bed bugs,
Oh.
putting them in a tall glass, and in the morning just dropping them out. This I have witnessed. He didn't want to kill them. He wanted to protect us. I must be like a 7 or 8 at that time. He did not say, you all stay up. He did his fatherly duty to protect the family, but not killing the bed bugs either. But what has happened is it put a deep impression in my own mind.
Yes.
Anytime I find something over here, I pick it up and throw
Outside.
out. Everything doesn't need to be killed. Everything is not attacking us. But we
Right.
think that we are being attacked. Our mind is thinking that we are being attacked. So our first response should not be smacking. Our first response should be looking at the Atma in that little bug. And if you protect it and put it outside, can you imagine how many blessings you're going to get? There's no difference between that Atma and your Atma. You are being blessed. And we need to increase the reservoir of these blessings. Got it?
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
So I'm not saying that don't have your houses well protected, but intention behind it,
Is the key.
yes, that is the key. Intention is more powerful than the action.
Action. Yes.
Action of that guru was fine, but intention was not fine. He wanted to become popular.
Mhm.
He wanted to become rich. He wanted to have more and more students. And he became a chameleon. So, but luckily Rishi Vyas, he met based upon, because he did do some good actions. That's why Rishi Vyas came. And from there, his life changed also. He came back as a human being. He came back as a Rishi, and he did do good karmas, and he evolved. So those good karmas he did, they did not go without fruits. But because of those selfish intentions, he became a chameleon also. And we don't know how many different lives we have lived.
Right.
How many times we have been a cat and the dogs and the reptiles, and even the devas. From the devtas, we can come back as human beings, because only from human beings we can attain liberation.
Yes.
Devtas cannot attain liberation. Devtahood is because of the good karmas, the pious deeds. Then when those good deeds are extinguished, they come back again. And who knows how many times we've been devtas.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So
Okay.
it is a long journey, but at least we are learning with the help of this beautiful scripture. And again, I will tell you, we need to dig deeper and deeper. Just like before the class, I was saying, it's like an ocean. We need to dive into the ocean to feel the water, not just stay on the surface and enjoy the ocean. So that's why sometimes you might think that, why do I go so deep into these verses? I want you to dig deeper into this water, okay, this wisdom, so that it becomes our wisdom, not just only Rishi Patanjali's wisdom. Okay, so we'll take a break
Thank
now.
you. Okay.
Minutes.
Everyone go for a break for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then we'll just
Back at
start from the
12:45.
next verse. Okay.